She was my mom's friend, but that night, she pulled me close. I didn't think stories like this were supposed to start with a broken receipt printer and a smell of burnt coffee. But that's where it began for me, standing behind the counter of a roadside repair shop at almost 9, wondering why my mom's friend hadn't left yet. The shop belonged to my uncle. I helped there in the evenings after my classes, mostly answering phones and pretending I knew what I was doing. That night had been slow. One car on the lift, rain ticking against the metal roof, the radio stuck on a station that played old songs nobody admitted to liking. She came in just before closing. I knew her, of course. I'd known her most of my life in fragments, holiday dinners, birthdays, the kind of presents that drifted in and out of our house with a polite smile and a bottle of something wrapped in brown paper. My mom always said her name the same way, careful, like it had weight. She stood just inside the doorway, shaking rain from her hair, looking around like she'd stepped into the wrong memory. "Your uncle still here?" she asked. Her voice hadn't changed. Calm, slightly amused, like she was always observing something just behind you. I told her he'd stepped out for parts. She nodded, didn't say anything else, just walked over to the counter and rested her elbows on it. I noticed then how tired she looked, not exhausted, just worn in a quiet way, like someone who'd been carrying the same bag too long. The receipt printer jammed when I tried to check her file. I muttered something under my breath, tapped it too hard. She watched me with that small half-smile. "You're more patient than he is," she said. "With machines?" I shrugged. "Depends on the day." She laughed, not loudly, just enough to break the stillness. The shop felt suddenly too quiet after that, like the walls were listening. We talked while we waited, not about anything important. Her car, my classes. She asked what I was studying and then apologized for asking, like she'd crossed some invisible line. I told her it was fine. It wasn't like she was a stranger. At one point she reached into her bag and pulled out her glasses, putting them on slowly, adjusting them at the bridge of her nose. I caught myself watching her hands. They were steady, confident, hands that knew where they belonged. She noticed. "Do I have grease on my face?" she asked, touching her cheek. "No," I said too quickly. Then, softer, "You're fine." The printer finally spat out the receipt, crooked and warm. I slid it toward her. Our fingers brushed, not dramatically, not even intentionally, but she didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. It was nothing, and somehow not nothing at all. Outside, the rain had picked up. She hesitated by the door. "Looks worse than when I came in," she said. I told her she could wait. The words came out before I decided to offer. She looked at me for a second longer than necessary, then stepped back inside. I turned the radio down. She sat on the old vinyl chair by the wall, crossing her legs, then uncrossing them, like she couldn't quite get comfortable. When my uncle still hadn't returned, she stood and walked closer to the counter again. The shop lights flickered. For a moment, everything felt suspended, like the world had narrowed to the hum of electricity and the sound of rain. "Your mom worries about you," she said suddenly. "You know that, right?" I nodded. She stepped closer than she needed to, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something clean, not sweet. She reached out, straightened the collar of my jacket, her fingers lingering there, just below my neck. It was such a small thing, a practical thing. But when she pulled her hand back, she didn't move away. And when the lights flickered again, she leaned in, briefly, instinctively, just enough that her shoulder brushed my chest. She stayed there for half a second too long. I've replayed that moment more times than I can admit, trying to understand why it mattered so much. Why that quiet closeness, in a place that smelled like oil and rain, refused to let me go. The next time I saw her, it was deliberate, but only on my side. Her car had been ready since morning. I didn't call. I told myself I was busy, that she'd come when she came. Still, every time the front bell chimed, my attention lifted before I could stop it. She arrived late afternoon, sunlight slanting through the open bay doors, dust floating in it like it had nowhere better to be. She wore a dark cardigan this time, sleeves pushed up just enough to show her wrists. Her hair was pulled back, loose strands already slipping free. "Sorry," she said, before I'd said anything. "Work ran long." "It's fine," I said. It hadn't been. Not really. But I liked that she thought it mattered. My uncle waved me over. Help her load the trunk. She watched us from a few steps away, arms folded, posture careful. Not closed, just contained. Like she didn't trust herself to lean too far in any direction. Outside, the air was warmer than I expected. She opened the trunk and stepped back. I lifted the box of old parts, heavier than it looked. When I set it down, she thanked me, then laughed quietly, like she'd almost forgotten how. You always do that, she said. Do what? Act like things don't bother you. I wiped my hands on my jeans. They do. I just don't announce it. She nodded, eyes on the ground. That's probably smarter. We stood there a moment, neither of us moving to close the trunk. A bus passed on the road behind us, loud and sudden, and she flinched. She noticed me noticing. Sorry, she said again, adjusting her cardigan. I'm just tired. It wasn't an apology meant for me. It slipped out, unguarded. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what the right response was. To comfort, to deflect, to pretend I hadn't heard the weight in it. You don't have to explain, I said finally. That seemed to land harder than I expected. She looked up, really looked at me, like she was checking for something behind my eyes. You're different from when you were a kid, she said. I hope so. She smiled, but it didn't reach all the way. Her hand went to the edge of the trunk, fingers tapping once, twice. Then she closed it with more force than necessary. Inside the shop, she lingered by the counter while I printed the paperwork. She was quieter than before, guarded again. When I handed her the keys, she didn't take them immediately. My birthday's next week, she said suddenly. I hate them. Oh, she shrugged. Everyone expects you to be grateful. For time. For survival. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't fill the silence. I let it sit between us, heavy but honest. She took the keys at last, our fingers not touching this time. Then, as if reconsidering, she reached out and lightly brushed grease from my knuckle. A practical gesture. Almost maternal. Almost. Her hand stayed there a beat longer than necessary. Take care of yourself, she said softly. I watched her walk away, every step measured, composed. But the warmth where her fingers had been stayed with me long after the door closed. And that night, no matter what I tried to focus on, my hand kept finding that same spot, like it was trying to remember something it wasn't supposed to want yet. It happened on a night that wasn't supposed to belong to either of us. The shop had lost power after a storm rolled through. Nothing dramatic, just a blown transformer somewhere down the road. My uncle closed early. I was locking up when she called, voice thin with static. Is there any chance you're still there? She asked. My car won't start. I didn't think. I said yes. By the time she arrived, the rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, the kind that makes everything feel muted. We worked by a battery lantern, its light low and uneven, throwing long shadows across the walls. The shop felt smaller without the hum of electricity, like it was holding its breath. She hovered nearby while I checked the battery, arms wrapped around herself. I could feel her watching me, not my hands, not the engine, but me. When I glanced up, she looked away too quickly. Sorry, she said. I know you're off. It's okay, I said. I don't mind. That wasn't the truth. I minded. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I wanted to help too much. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen and stiffened. Didn't pick it up. It buzzed again. Then again. You can answer it, I said. She shook her head. Not tonight. I went back to the engine. After a moment, she spoke again, quieter. Do you ever feel like you missed the version of your life where things made sense? I paused. The lantern flickered. I think I'm still in the part where I don't know what that version looks like. She smiled at that. A real one this time. Then it faded. I used to think certainty came with age, she said. Turns out, you just get better at hiding the questions. The rain picked up again, tapping against the roof. Close. Insistent. She stepped nearer, drawn by the small circle of light. I became aware of everything at once. The warmth of her body, the faint sound of her breathing, the way her hand hovered near my shoulder like she wasn't sure where it belonged. I shouldn't talk to you about this, she said. You're not saying anything wrong. That's not what I mean. I straightened, wiped my hands. We were too close now. The kind of close that asks something of you. I could smell rain on her clothes. Soap. Something softer underneath. Her phone buzzed again. She exhaled, long and shaky, then turned it face down. I don't want to go home, she said. Not a plea, just a fact. The words settled between us. I wanted to reach out, to do something, to make it easier, quieter. Instead, I stayed still. Your car should start now, I said, voice steady enough to fool both of us. She nodded, disappointment flickering before she caught it. As she turned to leave, her sleeve snagged on the edge of the counter. Without thinking, I reached out to free it. My fingers closed around her wrist, gentle, instinctive. She stopped, looked at me. For a second, neither of us moved. The rain filled the silence. My thumb rested just below her pulse, feeling it jump. I leaned in, just enough to feel the question in the air, and the lantern died, plunging us into darkness. The darkness didn't rush us. It settled. No light, no hum, just the sound of rain easing off, and our breathing suddenly too loud to ignore. I loosened my grip immediately, like I'd been caught doing something I didn't yet understand. I'm sorry, I said. Too fast. She didn't step away. I didn't mean. I tried again, then stopped. Words felt dangerous in the dark. Like once spoken, they wouldn't let us pretend anymore. It's okay, she said, but her voice wasn't steady. You didn't do anything. We stood there, inches apart, unable to see each other, somehow more exposed because of it. I could picture her anyway. The crease between her brows when she was thinking too hard. The way her mouth went still when she was holding something back. I think, she said slowly, we should talk for a second. That sentence landed heavier than anything else she could have said. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. The emergency lights flickered on after a moment, dim and amber, casting just enough glow to outline her face. She looked older like that. Not in a bad way, just honest. Like the effort had dropped. She leaned back against the counter, arms folded again, not defensive, more like she needed something to hold herself together. This isn't normal, she said. I waited. I don't mean inappropriate, she added, then paused. I mean confusing. My chest tightened. I kept my hands at my sides. I've been trying not to confuse things. She let out a small breath that was almost a laugh. You're not the one doing that. That surprised me. She looked down at the floor. I tell myself I come here because it's easy, familiar, because your uncle is kind, and your mom would approve, and nothing bad has ever happened in this place. Her fingers tightened around her sleeves. But lately, I leave feeling unsettled. I swallowed. I don't want to make things harder for you. I know. She looked up then, and something in her eyes shifted. That's part of the problem. The silence stretched. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was loaded. You look at me, she said quietly, like I'm not already decided. I don't mean to. I know. Again. Softer this time. But it makes me forget who I'm supposed to be around you. That sentence knocked the air out of me. I stayed still because I didn't trust myself to move without crossing something we couldn't uncross. My life is very full, she went on. Responsibilities. Histories. People who expect me to be consistent. She shook her head once. And then I come here, and for a few minutes, I don't feel invisible. I didn't answer. I didn't reach for her. I just stood there and let her words land, one by one, like they were choosing where to hurt. She straightened, smoothing her cardigan, rebuilding herself piece by piece. This has to stop, she said. Not firmly. Sadly. I nodded, even though my throat burned. She picked up her phone, hesitated, then met my eyes one last time. I don't trust myself, she whispered, and that scares me more than wanting you ever could. I thought stopping would make things quieter. It didn't. A week passed. Then another. She didn't come by. I told myself that was the point, that we'd said what needed saying, that adults knew how to close doors without slamming them. Still, every afternoon around the same time, my body expected the sound of her car on gravel. Then my mom asked me to drop something off at her place. Just some files she left here, she said. You remember where she lives. I did. I wished I didn't. Her house was smaller than I remembered. Neat. Intentional. Like everything had a place because it had to. She opened the door slowly, like she'd already decided not to be surprised. Oh, she said. It's you. I can leave. No, she stepped aside. You don't have to. Inside, The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older underneath. Memory, maybe. She took the folder from my hands, set it down without opening it. You look thinner, she said. I shrugged. School. She nodded, but her eyes didn't leave my face. Not the way they used to. This time it was searching. I shouldn't have said what I said, she said suddenly. I didn't think. I did, she interrupted gently. I just didn't expect the silence to feel louder than the confusion. She walked to a shelf near the window and picked up a framed photo. Hesitated, then handed it to me. It was a picture of her in her 20s, sitting on a beach. Beside her was a man with dark hair and an easy smile. His arm was around her shoulders like it belonged there. That's Daniel, she said. He died 8 years ago. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't even known she'd been married. He was kind, she continued. Quiet. Always watching, never pushing. She took the frame back, traced the edge with her thumb. After he died, people kept telling me I'd find that again. Like it was something you could replace. She looked at me then. Really looked. You don't look like him, she said. But the way you pay attention does. The room felt suddenly smaller. My chest tightened, not with pride, not with hope, with something heavier. I'm sorry, I said. I know. She set the photo face down. That's why I didn't tell you before. I didn't want to turn you into a memory. We stood there, the space between us filled with all the things neither of us could change. Outside, a car passed. Normal life, continuing without us. I don't want to need you, she said quietly. And I don't want to pretend I don't feel steadier when you're around. I swallowed. I don't want to be a stand-in. You're not, she said immediately. Then softer. That's what scares me. She stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that I could feel the warmth of her. Her hand lifted, hovered near my chest, then fell back to her side. Some losses don't fade, she said. They just make room for dangerous questions. When I left, she didn't follow me to the door. But as I stepped outside, I heard it lock behind me. Not sharply, not with finality. Carefully, like someone trying not to wake something they weren't sure they were ready to face. It didn't happen all at once. There was no call, no dramatic decision. Just a slow re-entry into each other's orbit, like gravity doing what it does when you stop fighting it. I started stopping by her place on Sundays, not announced, not hidden either. Always with a reason that barely qualified. A book my mom wanted back. Soup she'd made too much of. Once, a lamp she couldn't figure out how to fix. She never said no. She also never invited me to stay. We'd sit at opposite ends of the couch at first, the space between us polite and intentional. The TV would be on, volume low, neither of us watching. Sometimes she talked about work. Sometimes I talked about school. Sometimes we said nothing for long stretches, and somehow that felt like the most honest version of us. One evening, rain started again, soft, steady, familiar. She turned the TV off herself this time. I've been thinking, she said, staring at her hands, about what it means to choose something without knowing where it leads. I waited. I spent a long time believing that if I didn't name things, they couldn't hurt me. She looked up. But not naming this hasn't made it go away. I nodded. I don't need it to be anything it can't be. She smiled faintly. That's what scares me most. You don't ask me to be less. The clock on the wall ticked. Loud. Honest. I'm not young, she said. Not apologetic. Just stating it. I come with habits. Fear. A past that doesn't stay quiet. I'm not looking for a clean version of anyone, I said. I just don't want to keep pretending this is nothing. She leaned back, closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, something had settled. Okay, she said. Not as permission, as acknowledgement. We didn't move closer right away. The world didn't shift. But after a while, she reached for her tea and her hand brushed mine on the table. This time, she didn't pull away. Neither did I. Her fingers were warm, slightly unsteady. She let out a breath she'd been holding. We go slowly. Yes. And we stop if it starts to feel like we're hiding from ourselves. Yes. She turned toward me then. Not fully, just enough that our shoulders touched. The contact was light, grounding. She rested her head briefly against mine, forehead to temple, like she was checking if the moment would break. It didn't. We stayed like that until the rain eased, until the tea went cold, until the clock kept ticking without asking anything of us. When I stood to leave, she didn't rebuild the distance this time. She walked me to the door, rested her hand on my arm, not holding, just there. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For staying," she replied, without trying to save me. Outside, the air was clean. Still, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some things don't need promises to exist, just the quiet agreement not to run when they finally arrive. I'm telling this now from a place that finally feels steady. Not perfect, not dramatic, just honest. People like to ask what happened next, as if there was a scene they missed, the moment where everything either fell apart or turned into something cinematic. The truth is quieter than that. Life kept moving. Work deadlines, school stress, grocery lists on the fridge. Her routines didn't disappear. Neither did my uncertainty. What changed was the way we occupied the same space. We learned each other slowly, not by uncovering secrets, but by respecting them. Some days we were close in ways that felt almost domestic, sitting at the same table, sharing food, brushing past each other without flinching. Other days we gave each other room, not out of fear, but out of care. She stopped apologizing for her pauses. I stopped trying to earn every moment. Once, weeks later, I caught her watching me from across the room the way she used to, like she was measuring something fragile. When she realized I'd noticed, she didn't look away this time. "I forget sometimes," she said, "that I don't have to brace myself around you." I didn't answer. I just nodded. Some truths don't need reinforcement. What I learned, what I didn't expect, is that love doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it shows up as restraint, as choosing not to rush, as sitting with someone's past without trying to rewrite it. She didn't become younger. I didn't become older overnight. But we met somewhere in the middle, where wanting didn't mean taking and closeness didn't mean possession. There were nights we lay side by side, fully clothed, not touching except for the accidental overlap of a knee or a shoulder. And that was enough. There were mornings she reached for my hand like it was familiar now, not forbidden. And I learned that being chosen quietly can feel stronger than being chased loudly. I don't tell this story because it was easy. I tell it because it was real. Because sometimes the most meaningful connections don't announce themselves as love at first sight. Sometimes they arrive as confusion, then patience, then a kind of gentleness that rewrites what you thought intimacy was supposed to look like. She was my mom's friend. She was a woman with a full life and a careful heart. And she was someone who taught me that love doesn't always ask you to be fearless, just honest enough to stay. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?